So some of you may have seen a recent showcase of a prototype of my bean-infested spin on the perfect, untouchable masterpiece, Yandere Simulator, that I made in 2 weeks, and a lot of people have been wondering where I'm going to be taking the game. So writing has been one of my biggest hobbies alongside game development for the longest time, and in recent times I've come to the absolutely bamboozling conclusion that for the longest time, my writing sucked ass. I'd say I first came to this realization when I went back and read a book I wrote, and I say book with heavy air quotes by the way, called I Was Sitting in an Old Chair, which is basically a somehow even worse version of Under the Hawthorn Tree, a novel that has a turn of events that's basically as exciting as watching paint dry, and characters who change as much as the fact we need air to breathe. Oh yeah, and on top of that there's a pretty weird ass romance between an 11-year-old girl and a 30-year-old man whose name was Patty. Now, I went into this book with the ambitious goal of making it 10,000 words long. Now, I only ever got about 5,000 words in, which is about 5,000 words too many. Anyway, I was 8 when I wrote that masterpiece, and the novel I wrote after that can only be described as the Mona Lisa of novels. Quite possibly the worst romance novel ever written. Now, you'd assume that a title like that is satire, but apparently my 12-year-old self was actually dead serious because the title is absolutely not a lie. Now, while this life-changing masterpiece was actually a bit more well-written than I Was Sitting in an Old Chair, it manages to balance it out by being 100 pages long. Not to mention that all the actually good stuff about the writing was done on complete accident, which is inevitable considering it was written by an autistic 12-year-old weeb, and the inspirations were Scott Pilgrim and Come We Can't Communicate. I mean, Scott Pilgrim is a story all about maturity and learning to be an adult, while Komi-san is a silly little romance comedy about a cute girl who does silly little things. It's too long to go over the entire thing, but if you want me to make a dedicated video on it, definitely make sure to subscribe. Now, despite it being the greatest piece of literature ever written, I unfortunately never finished the novel, and much of the disappointment of my hundreds of fans I definitely had, I didn't write another masterpiece for years. Until 8th Day Kishimoto-kun. Yes, I somehow went from writing SUCK MY NUT to an emotional romance comedy about learning to drift away from cynicism towards friendship and connection, learning about life purpose and accepting God, all coming together with a pretty bangy, if I do say so myself, jazz fusion soundtrack. Except that it actually wasn't the next thing I wrote. Yes, that's right, you've been bamboozled, or should I say, bean-boozled. The beans. They get them out. Before I hit Kishimoto-kun, I made a game called Tell Me Everything. That actually came first in audio and 17th overall in the game jam it was submitted to. A lot of people told me that the game was super well written, brought tears to their eyes, changed their life, and I can say with confidence that those are probably lies. Anyway, with Kishimoto-kun, my writing dramatically improved. But you can always do better! Now, Yandere Simulator is pretty infamous for having the best video game plot of all time, where 10 girls fall in love with the most average Joe Schmo to ever grace planet Earth over the course of 10 weeks. So I'm not sure I'll really be able to match writing of that quality, you know. I'm being very sarcastic. Now, the game's puzzles, while proven fun and satisfying through playtesting, are still quite simple. And the social sim aspects basically require the game to be well written. And since writing is such a big hobby of mine, I decided, fuck it, let's just go all out. So I basically intend for the story to almost sort of carry the game. Now, Kishimoto-kun, while still good and fairly well written, does have a lot of flaws. People have told me they really like the way the characters interact, but there's a problem. So Kishimoto-kun is a pretty well written character, and I wouldn't really change anything about him. And Fujinami, while lacking character development, is still pretty well written too, and clashes just perfectly enough with Kishimoto's character. Kishimoto is extremely sarcastic, level-headed, responsible, and quick-witted, which clashes perfectly with Fujinami, who's extremely stupid, impulsive, irresponsible, gullible, and often jumps to the most extreme conclusions, which gives the two a very entertaining dynamic, and makes their conversations almost addictive to read. Though they retain similarities outside of their personality that still make it sense for them to be friends. But there's 3 characters altogether in the game, and Katie and Kishimoto, well, they're not really on par. At the beginning of the game, their dynamic is extremely entertaining to watch, merely because it hasn't really ever been done before, at least to my knowledge. But when you get to the point of the game where they can actually talk to each other, Katie just becomes generic anime girl number 3 billion, which actually would clash perfectly with Kishimoto's character, and the context leading up to that moment in the game would make sense for them to like each other. But with the way Kishimoto's character develops, their dynamic becomes extremely boring. And it doesn't help that the romance is terribly written. I don't even know where to begin, especially considering I'd like for this to be a relatively short video, and the foreshadowing of the game, while not terrible, definitely could have been done better too. So for teaching me everything, I'm trying to improve on all the above mentioned things, giving each character an interesting dynamic and chemistry, along with a lot more character development for all the characters compared to Kishimoto-kun, where Kishimoto was really the only person with a proper character arc. Also, Kishimoto-kun was a slice of life story, and well, Teach Me Everything is not. So I did a lot of research into plot development, and I've come up with a series of events that not only sufficiently develop the characters, but also provide a lot of unexpected plot twists that will hopefully leave the players desperately wanting to find out what's going to happen to the characters next, while delivering an impactful message. Though I did encounter a pretty big issue. So this is a pretty serious story with a lot of emotional twists, but the characters... Now, I've created a lot of animations specifically for certain cutscenes that give the characters a lot more emotion, but even then there's room for improvement. Which is why I plan to recruit a whole host of volunteer voice actors, and if you want an audition for voice acting, make sure to join the Discord in the description below. Anyway, that's all from me today. If you want to support me, definitely make sure to subscribe and follow me on Itch. Bye!